the element of any, there's no element nor prospect of a political union. So it has to be that type of approach.
But in Canada, though, those barriers between provinces that still exist, I mean, is this, I remember you saying a few years ago that a crisis permits government to move fast and in a coordinated way. Is this a crisis in Canada? Is it going to help you reduce the barriers between provinces?
Yes, it's a crisis because it's a fundamental change in many of the operating, I was going to say assumptions, but the operating rules of the system. I mean, the reliance on the open global trading system, a reliance and an expectation of further integration, particularly in North America. I mean, that's not going to happen. That doesn't mean there isn't still going to be a fair bit of free trade in North America and cross-investment, but this sort of relentless process of greater integration has reversed. That's a big change. And when you have a big change like that and you had your economy oriented towards that, which ours was, some of your strengths become vulnerabilities, and you have to do big things. And so one of the lessons, we've talked about this, many in the room have lived it. I've certainly, by luck, I would like to say, not because of cause. I didn't cause the crises I've been in. But my experience of being in them is in a crisis, you have to be bold. You have to act big. Uncertainty weighs down activity, and unless you're leading from the center, whether you're a central bank with respect to supporting financial institutions or monetary policy, or you're a government in terms of charting a new course, you need to be bold. And that's why we're looking for scale in terms of diversification of our exports. That's why our budget, which is coming out in 2 weeks' time, is going to have what we call generational investment in Canada on an order of magnitude that really changes the scale of the economy, the ambition of the economy. Of course, it will also, just by its very fact, provide GDP and growth and jobs for Canadians. But as important as that is, more important is going to be a reorientation of the country, and very much an outward-looking orientation that I think is very complementary to ASEAN.
One of the really hard things for the countries in this region is that although, in theory, they would be able to negotiate, for example, with the United States much more strongly if they held together, the new US approach is very much, we'll only negotiate with countries one by one. How can countries in the rest of the world who want to diversify and sustain cooperation, how can they balance the need to line up and do one-by-one deals with the US administration with the need to actually forge relations in their own region with other regions? I mean, it feels like, you know, you've been a bit of an example for European leaders in how to do that, how to sit calmly and negotiate in the White House, but at the same time, you're here, you're pursuing those other kinds of deals. But I just wondered, what's your observation on this for countries in ASEAN who are being pushed to do the one-to-one deal, but who actually need to think about their other trade partners?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and with respect to the European Union, of course, President Costa is here as well, also participated as a partner of ASEAN in the meetings this morning and through tomorrow. And that'll bring me to a point I'll make in a second. I think a few general points about the situation with respect to the United States. The United States has a new trade policy. It applies to every country, every jurisdiction in the world. We understand that and we respect that. It is a major shift, and the way we're framing it is it's a rupture, not a transition. This is a very big change, almost overnight, and therefore it's difficult to deal with. It can be difficult to deal with, but everybody's dealing with it. That's the first. The second is, if your economy is highly integrated, or certain sectors are highly integrated with the United States, revealed preference, to use a fancy term, is that you will pay a price to keeping access to that market, either in the form of tariffs, changes to some domestic policies, commitments for investment. Different countries have done various versions of that. What you should try to avoid doing, though, is tying your hands about what you can do with other jurisdictions. Because there are a lot more countries by GDP that are willing and keen to continue to have relatively open trade, certainly to have rules-based trade, to respect rules-based trades, to have, and that is happening in parallel to these sharper changes. So you get a sharp change in the relationship with the U.S., as the President has said, and I understand this and respect it. He said it, me sitting next to him, we are going to charge countries for access to the U.S. It's like access to a good country club, I think he might have said, or Costco. To put it the other way, I think he thinks more on country club than Costco. We understand it. It is the premium market. It's the most dynamic economy. You decide what you're willing to pay, but at the same time, you want to be in other clubs. You want to be at other tables. You want to be building that out. And I said I would make a point about the European Union. I think it's quite relevant for ASEAN, or if I may broaden it a bit more towards CPTPP. Some members are part of that. These are two large trading blocs with not identical, but complementary approaches to trade. And there is an opportunity. It's a point I've made. It's a point some others in CPTPP have made. There is a possibility of bringing those closer together, having at a minimum a docking between the two blocks or broader arrangements that there. And that's how you start to rebuild a broader global trading system. You're approaching more than a third of global trade there, potentially 40%, depending on how you do it. Provided you have you've retained that flexibility in order to do that. And as things stand right now, most countries have.
So is this a sort of short-term, medium-term, long-term thing? In the short term, are we going to see countries doing a lot of deals with the United States, but in the medium term, needing reliable partners? If you're going to reorganize your whole economy for trade, you need reliable partners. Yeah. So in the medium term, do you think we're going to see a world which trades a little less with the United States and a little more within regions and between regions?
I think the short answer is yes. I think as well there would be a natural. It's at a minimum it's an acceleration of a trend that the weight of economic activity and dynamism would drive as well. I mean, this is we're in one of the most, arguably the most dynamic regions in the world, and naturally more trade is going to flow to here. I'll give you another example. Just the very fact that one of the themes of this presidency is sustainability. And there's an understanding that moving towards lower carbon energy, lower carbon manufacturing, lower carbon services, etc., will be a driver of competitiveness. It's good for the planet, but it's a driver of competitiveness. There's an understanding of that. And it's not just a theme, but a lot of the discussions are around how do we build that out. That is not a priority at present in the United States, or at least it's not an administration priority in the United States. So naturally, trade is going to shift away by definition. The other reason is from the U.S. for a period of time on that. It's also shifting because it's more expensive to trade with the United States. That's what a tariff does, and that will drive some of that as well. But all of that said, the United States is the world's largest. It is the most dynamic economy. It is a source of constant innovation, and everyone, very much Canada included, is going to want to be active there.
And look, you've long championed kind of sustainability in a number of roles, advising the UN, advising prime ministers, etc. Are you optimistic or about the sustainability agenda holding? I mean, the world as I see it, the backtracking of the United States has led a lot of companies to say, actually, let's slow down on the sustainability stuff. Let's slow down on the net zero stuff. Are you seeing that? Is it harder to be an advocate for net zero?
Well, I've got a different job now, which is to advocate for Canada and to manage for Canada. What I think you're seeing is, and this is in terms of our approach, you're seeing a sharp move towards performance over targets, investment and action over sort of prohibition. So in other words, and I'll give an example on that, which is, I referenced earlier, Canadian LNG and the opportunity that's there. If we went back 5 years, there would have been a greater focus on leapfrogging from coal in the region to solar and storage, particularly. There's probably more of that that transition is going to be with gas for a period of time. Not all, there will be a number that do leapfrog. So that's an example, but that's a material reduction in emissions. It's a different route to it. Carbon capture. Let me give one other example. Canada has just under 12% of the global capacity in carbon capture, a huge number. One of the, I referenced about $500 billion of investments over the course of the next 5 years. Part of that will be in major carbon capture to decarbonize our exports of oil, decarbonizing Scope 1, Scope 2, to be clear. You can't decarbonize Scope 3. Again, that's performance, and that's investment for emission reduction. So that's a shift. If I can make one last point, which is something coming out of the region. Singapore, Malaysia, and others have been amongst the leaders here, which is actually tracking the emissions of goods and soon services, so it's going to be clearer where that performance is.
So you mentioned there that it's one thing to be an advisor on sustainability, it's another thing to become Prime Minister for all Canadians, including those who are in the energy sector. What surprised you about becoming Prime Minister? I mean, there's not that many Prime Ministers in this room. What was the surprise?
What was the surprise? It doesn't end. There's an insight. Well, it does end, actually. I shouldn't say that. When you say it doesn't end, that's just before it ends, actually. But I meant more from a 24/7 perspective. What's the most surprising thing? I think I'll give the most positive surprise, is that you have access to unlimited resources for an issue, so that and it doesn't matter what the issue is, the only thing that's holding you back is lack of imagination and to some degree time, but people will help their government. People will pick up the phone. They will respond to your inquiry. Your officials will be able to get the information, and that is a big advantage. The only caveat to that, you and I know, and many of us in the room have lived through crises. In a crisis, you're never going to have perfect information. You have to know when you've done enough in order to take a decision with imperfect information. But you do have the privilege of, in these roles, of being able to draw on the resources of your country, including the intellectual resources of the country, and it's important to do so.
And look, last question, and it's a big one. But you're an economist. You've been chair of the Financial Stability Board. You've navigated now both financial crises and trade crises. Where do you see the global economy in 5 years' time, or over the next 5 years? Are there big things you think are going to change?
Well, I think it's. I will quote our host, our ultimate host, the Prime Minister, this morning, which is, words to the effect of the old world or the old system is gone, the new one has not yet formed. And so it's a big question, and it's an important question because in many respects, those of us in this room will help determine where that is. And what we were talking about earlier is Canada free trade with ASEAN, CPTPP with EU, that link becoming there, following through on the inclusivity and sustainability. The extent to which we actually follow that through, this room, literally and metaphorically, will help determine the direction of the global economy, or a substantial proportion of the global economy. And because it's ASEAN, because it's dynamic, because it's forward-looking, because it's young, that sort of shows where the world is going. And so I think it can be incredibly influential. And look, we're out of time.
Thank you, Prime Minister Mark Carney. Do join me in a huge round of thanks for Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, some of you are standing. Please stand for the Right Honourable Mark Carney, Prime Our final panel discussion, everyone, is on artificial intelligence. We're back to AI once again. So it's like a little bit of a U-turn. We keep going back to artificial intelligence because, just to recap, Her Excellency Christina Georgieva, the
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is an audio test. Hey, yeah. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Parfait. C'est bon.
Good evening, everyone. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, let me, on behalf of ASEAN Business Advisory Council, welcome all of you to KL, and thank you, Prime Minister, for leading such a high-quality bunch of leaders, business leaders from Canada. I just want to make 3 points with Canada and ASEAN. Firstly, I read somewhere that roughly when it comes to Malaysia, something like 90% of Canadians know very little. When it comes to Singapore, it's about 83%. And I think the reverse is probably even more sharp, right? If you ask a Malaysian about Canada, very little. So to me, that's upside, sir. That's upside. The second point I'd like to make is that, I think that kind of upside means that you have to engage. You have to engage. And I think what you're doing, sir, is perfect. If we don't meet, and there's a Malay saying, tak jumpa tak cinta, which is if you don't meet, you can't fall in love. And I think this kind of trips are absolutely crucial. And I'd also like to say this, that from my interactions with Wayne at the Business Council and so on, I get the impression that Canadians don't show off very well. Yeah, and I think you really need to come out there and be able to boast about your business, a bit like your neighbors. Your neighbors do it very well, probably overdo it, but somewhere in between, hopefully. And, I think the prospects for business between the region are good. Prime Minister, you covered it very, very well in your fireside chat just now. I don't need to go into that. And my final point is this. I've done business with Canadians. I had a partnership with Kevin during my time as a banker. And we found Canadians very, very good partners. And I think good partnerships are the way to go. So with that, Prime Minister, thank you again. I hand you over to Kevin.
Well, first, thank you, Prime Minister Carney, for coming today. And those of us who saw your fireside chat earlier, I think, were impressed by the clarity of what you're trying to do and the clarity of your vision for Canada. On behalf of everybody who's here, and it's great to see so many people I know who are from the ASEAN region, but are also from Canada, who are interested in the ASEAN region. And Dato' Nazir's words were really good. I think that building an understanding of what's happening here is important. And I remember that one of our partners in the Philippines told me, you can fake caring, but you can't fake showing up. And I think that we want to recognize that you're here, and you don't build relationships unless you're here and you're taking the time to do that. So I think that's extremely important. And I do see, and our history at Sun Life goes back 130 years in the ASEAN region. We've been 130 years in the Philippines. We're the #1 insurance company in the Philippines and the #2 asset management firm there. And we did that by being here and understanding and building relationships. And these types of events where we can bring business leaders from Canada and business leaders from the ASEAN region together are extremely important. And I think the ability for us to create trade relationships where they're based on trade rules and the rule of law that you spoke about earlier, Prime Minister, I think is really important. And there's so much opportunity in the ASEAN region, fast-growing economies, 600 million people, that we can equally work together on things like infrastructure, investing, things like finding ways around energy and sustainable energy, and finding ways to do more together. I do thank the Business Council of Canada and Goldie for supporting this arrangement to get here and bring Canadian companies here. As Dato' Nazir said, more Canadian companies need to show up, and we need to do more than just show up and more than just build an understanding. We have to start executing on new trade agreements, and I think a partnership between business and government where we work together to find those opportunities to actually start executing. And I think we have so much capabilities in Canada that we can bring to the rest of the world. If you think about Canada as being a place where you've got sometimes we think of ourselves as small, and we are small in population, but we're not small in economy. We're not small in natural resources. We're not small in energy. We're not small in technology. We're not small in terms of the quality of the people we have. And I think we have to bring more of that Canada to the rest of the world. And I think the ASEAN countries is a great place for us to bring that and to focus and to facilitate. So thank you all for being here tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Wayne for some comments.
Right Honourable Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada. My next was to thank Tansri Nazir, who had to leave, and I promise I will improve my boasting from now on. Distinguished guests, it's my great pleasure on behalf of the Canada-ASEAN Business Council to welcome you to the Canada-ASEAN Business Reception. We're greatly honoured to be joined by the Right Honourable Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada. As we all know, we're gathered at a very particularly pivotal moment in global trade and commerce, and my message is simple, that Canada is a partner that ASEAN can trust, and based on this trust, the Canada-ASEAN partnership has continued gaining momentum. The Indonesia-Canada Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement signed last month, the ongoing ASEAN-Canada Free Trade Agreement negotiations targeted for conclusion early next year signal our collective trust and commitment to a predictable, rules-based, and future-ready economic architecture. With what's happening globally, it is truly remarkable that our two regions can come together in a civil manner for mutual benefit and drive two trade agreements, I'm projecting a bit here, forward in such a relatively short period of time, with more yet to come, particularly with the Philippines, which is quite exciting. ASEAN has responded in kind with the upgrading of Canada to a strategic partner, the CABC's ASEAN accreditation as one of only 3 private sector groups, thus honoured, the conclusion of the Indonesian-Canada CPA, and the ongoing Canada-ASEAN FTA. Growth in trade and investment has followed with a double-digit expansion for the past decade and record high two-way trade of USD approximately $24 billion in 2024. However, there is a long way yet to go, especially in energy security, food security, two-way capital flows, digital services, and innovation. With regards to capital flows, ASEAN capital flows, notably originating from Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, have begun making several major investments in the past several years in Canada's forestry, mining, port infrastructure, institutional real estate, agri-food processing, energy, and technology sectors. We definitely hope to see more, and maybe after this reception, we will see that many conversations advancing that. In closing, on behalf of the CABC, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to Prime Minister Carney, his office, the Government of Canada, Tansri Nazir Razak and the ASEAN BOC, as well as BCC, for making this event today possible. And it's now my great privilege to invite Prime Minister Carney up to the stage for his remarks. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Wayne. So my big takeaway is to show up. So I'll keep showing up, and I thank you all for showing up, and I want to make it worth your while, and I'll just highlight a couple of points. Some of you did have to sit through my fireside chat, but let me just hit a few things there. I think the first is just to get across the scale of ambition in Canada right now. We intend over the course. The course of food security. We mentioned food security. Ken Seitz is your one-stop shop for food security with Nutrien globally, and that's actually not an exaggeration. It happens to be true. There you go. First boast of the evening. Secondly, it's enormous food. I'm just warming up for my American level of boasting. We are going to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next 10 years. We think we can do it in a much shorter period of time. That's $300 billion of additional exports. Most of that is going to come from Asia, in our view, and I'll justify that in a second. But on top of this, and I just underscore this because this is a two-way relationship, our expectation coming out of the budget is that we're laying out a path for at least $500 billion of additional investment in Canada in the next 5 years. Additional, not total, additional. And that's U.S. So these are orders of magnitude that start to be relevant. Areas, both in terms of the two-way trade and the domestic investment, we're basically going to build out the infrastructure to help drive energy corridors, both clean and conventional, trade corridors, new port infrastructure, and others. But from LNG, where we're putting ourselves on a path to at least 50 million tons by the end of this decade, but double that by 2040. potentially more. It's easily done when you have the 4th largest reserves of LNG in the world, and you have demand here for the energy transition. To nuclear, a few days ago, I launched with my good friend, Premier Ford. Did I say good friend, Premier Ford? I said the always entertaining, no, the always interesting, the always unpredictable Premier Ford. Yeah, God, sorry, I don't know why I mixed the two up, President and Premier Ford. Is that on, by the way? No. We launched, in all seriousness, the first commercial SMR. So this is not a pilot, it's 300 megawatt SMR, which we're building out 1.2, ultimately 1.2 gigawatts of SMR over the course of the next several years. 80% of the supply chain for that is in Canada. Okay, so this is basically, it's Canadian technology, Canadian supply chain that we're gonna drag through, and ultimately, obviously, an opportunity here. Critical minerals, I won't belabor it, but we are one of the biggest deposits. We are the biggest financier of mining in the world. Okay, full stop. So the ecosystem is there and can reach out. And when it comes to finance, whether it's Sun Life, there you go. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Sun Life in the depth there and the infrastructure expertise, partners with our pension funds, who are the largest and most sophisticated infrastructure amongst, I'll be Canadian, I'll say amongst the most sophisticated. They are the most sophisticated institutional investors in infrastructure. Two-way and good partners into Canada, but great partners here in ASEAN for committed longer-term capital. Now I'm going to do a bit of a side point, but just to emphasize when I say on scale of our ambitions. Sometimes you have policy and then you have personnel. Personnel is often policy. My chief of staff came here to the government from running our largest law firm and then being the number 2 at the Caisse de dépôt, which is one of those largest pension funds. The head of the civil service, who we just brought in, was CEO of our largest telecom, CFO of our largest railway, CEO for 10 years of our largest pension fund, and then our largest utility. So, a real business person who's come in to run the civil service to orient. That way, my Minister of Natural Resources, 30 years on Wall Street, Bay Street, financing infrastructure. Our Minister of International Trade, Manny Sidhu. I can't say 30 years because you are older than 30, right, Manny? But you are, no. Trade lawyer expertise prior to stepping up and running and serving the people of Canada. Our special envoy, Ian McKay, out of Tokyo, deep business experience, including surviving 9 years working with Howard Lutnick. This guy is tough. This guy is tough, I can assure you. And I have some background in the private sector. Understand. We know how business works. We've worked in and around it. We know how to structure finance. We know how to move quickly. And we will do all of those things to help deliver on the scale. It was referenced, Wayne, thank you for referencing it. The Indonesia free trade agreement was done quite quickly. We pushed it over when we came into government. We've just announced that intention to finish the ASEAN free trade agreement, which has been carefully negotiated for 4 years, which is going to be completed next year. But a similar timeline for a free trade agreement with the Philippines. And then we are working, as I alluded to those of you who came to the Fireside chat, on a much more ambitious docking of CPTPP to the EU, which Canada can do because we're in both, and therefore we're an honest broker across both. But that just gives you a sense of where we are. I want to finish. You want me to finish, and I will finish. I want to finish back in on the reliable partner and values, because as I said on the stage, you need a partner who respects the letter of agreements. We are that partner, but also the spirit of agreements and the values underneath those agreements. And we do believe in rules-based law. We believe in the values of sustainability, inclusivity, solidarity, partnership. But I am going to quote, and I tested our ambassador to ASEAN earlier, and she's going to sing along, the words from the ASEAN anthem, which I know you all know, but just in case I didn't actually this morning. But two of the key lines that stuck with me is that in ASEAN, we dare to dream and we care to share. And so Canada dares to dream big. We have laid out, we're laying out $1 trillion of investment opportunities over the course of the next decade, U.S. And we dare to care. Sustainability, inclusivity, and in partnership. The ASEAN anthem, everyone after me. Later on, there'll be after this reception, there'll be a short karaoke where we'll have a chance to sing it together. But thank you for being here, and we look forward to the partnership and to showing up.